Welcome to Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue heard exclusively on MalcolmPresents.com. This is Malcolm Berman with my co-host, Deborah Manning. And what we talk about is everything and anything, but mainly about what's happening in today's world and how it affects us and our children and our, what's it, genome?
Yes, absolutely. The whole human race.
The whole human race. Anyway. Good day.
Good day. I'm Deborah Manning, and I'm a native of California, born in Southern California, moved to, of all places, Greenville, South Carolina, 6.5 years ago. And I'm an ex-news reporter. I worked for Cap Cities, which was a major market in Los Angeles, as well as down in San Diego, worked for PBS, National Public Radio. And before they unfortunately went woke, but when they were even-handed about things. And I will always be a journalist. That's the reason that Malcolm and I have had a friendship for, my goodness gracious, I guess it's been 10, 20 years, something like that. He used to be my producer when my late husband and I were doing a program called Real Money. And we were talking about how normal, average, everyday people can really utilize their cash, regardless of how much or how little you're making. So,
Well, I love saying we've known each other. We've known each other and been friends with each other for the last century.
Well, you know what? We have, and it's really interesting because we come from two different places. I have to say that I try and stay middle of the road. However, I do go a little conservative on things. However, I am an independent voter. And how would you describe yourself, Malcolm?
I am a fiscal conservative and otherwise very liberal, so a social liberal.
But one thing I have to say is that we do not let politics interfere with our friendship. We will not, period, end of story. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to do this podcast, this Zoom podcast, is to make sure that we can come up with common ground. And I know that a lot of you who have watched us the last year and a half go, oh my gosh, how can these two people chat? Well, I don't know whether you remember, but on 60 Minutes, they had count and counterpoint. You remember that? Yes. So I think we're the new updated version of count and counterpoint, where they had two diametrically opposite individuals. And you saw it on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, they did a great bit on that.
I will not call you a slut.
I thank you. And I will not call you an SOB. So
now now I'm forgetting names. This political couple, you always see him on TV, and he is
Carville. Yeah.
Yeah. And he is a liberal, and his wife is a staunch conservative.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess they just don't talk about it at home.
Well, you know, as I say, there still is a lot of common ground. And one of the things that Malcolm and I talk about is, how do we get to that common ground? Because we're Americans. We're Americans first and foremost. And as I say, and I've said in past meetings, that I'm very concerned about the demise of the Democratic Party. We need to have opposing viewpoints. And I have a number of Republican friends here in South Carolina, which is predominantly a conservative state. And those folks are saying to me, well, we can hardly wait for November to take place, et cetera, et cetera. Only one slight problem with that. I want to hear what the Republicans are going to do for us. Not just that they're not Democrats, but what exactly are they going to do for us? Here in South Carolina, the gasoline prices have now started to crest again, up back over $4. We're at $4.15 approximately. When we first got here 6.5 years ago, 2015, the price of gasoline here was, hold on to your hat, $1.62 per gallon. Yeah. And for common everyday folks, working people, trying to somehow manage to scrape together $4.04 or $4.10 to commute to work is a real hardship. And I know that President Biden is on the bully pulpit talking about how it's Putin's war in Ukraine, which has gone on now for over a month, that he's the whole reason behind this. But there are other reasons that have taken place, such as the situation, the war on fossil fuels. And you and I go around and around about climate control and climate change and all of that. But bottom line is, we all know we need to be able to do something. we need to be able to make sure that we do have a good solid source of energy. Unlike Europe, which at this point right now, they're in real trouble, especially now with the war in Ukraine going on with Russia. Russia oil is basically their mother's milk of energy there. And yet at this point right now, we pretty well shut off the fossil fuels here in the United States. So it's quite a dilemma. It's
Yeah,
quite a dilemma here.
well, actually, which you and I agree on,
Mhm.
is you can't cut off fossil fuels, at the knees and
Thank you.
not have any alternative. But they have to, what seems to be is one side wants to cut off fossil fuels and the other side, says, no, you can't, but they don't want to put any money for alternative type of energy.
Well, I think that at this point right now, in fact, I'm doing a little bit of research for you, Malcolm, and we'll be chatting about that in the coming weeks. But there seems to be now a resurgence in the idea of nuclear power. Now, I remember in the 70s when I was going to San Clemente High, that San Onofre, the nuclear plant down there, it was subject to massive walkouts and demonstrations against it. And it finally did shut down, as did Diablo Canyon up in the middle of California. Um, Once again, those were interesting experiments, but I do think that right now the technology could certainly, with tax credits, be encouraged, because certainly at this point right now, windmills are not cutting it. Ask the people in Texas when they had that horrific winter storm. My stepdaughter was a part of that, and she said it was unbelievable how the pipes froze in the house, and she said it was, once again, they were living in a third world country, and it was for her quite frightening. But I do think that we need to start to spur on the technology, but cutting off fossil fuels right now, we've seen exactly what happened now to Europe, especially now with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And I think it's a warning. It's a warning for all of us.
Well, there has to be, as we talk about, there has to be a transition. A
Mhm.
transition is not you cut it off and, we don't have anything as an alternative.
Mhm.
The thing is you cut off a certain percentage. I don't know what it would be. And then you add, and then you do the research and you federally fund the alternative energies. And I don't see why the fossil people haven't gotten into the alternative energies.
Well,
It's where they're
I
stuck to one way.
Yeah, I think that at this point right now, I think the whole idea of tax credits make a real good idea. For example, I know that our senator here in South Carolina, that would be Tim Scott, not necessarily Lindsey Graham, but Tim Scott championed the idea of what's called opportunity zones. And that was for economically depressed areas to be able to have the ability to attract businesses, supermarkets, gas stations, to underserved communities in various parts of this, for example, the state of South Carolina. And those businesses were given tax credits to be able to offset any of the profit that they might possibly have. Tax credits, as now I'm becoming an accountant these days, tax credits are the way to go. That's the carrot rather than the stick.
Yeah, Tim Scott seems to be, from what I know of him, very reasonable and pretty clear thinking. Lindsey
Mhm.
Graham is becoming a caricature of who he was. I mean, I think with that side, I think you agree with me in a certain way. Uh,
There's certain things listen. There's certain things I agree with Lindsey Graham on, but I have to tell you, and I'm the type, because that's just the way I am, and I urge you as well. I call up Lindsey Graham's office and Tim Scott's office on a regular basis. And the Graham office knows me as Mrs. Fisher. That's my my married name. And I do read him the riot act, because at this point right now we need good, solid solutions, not just rhetoric. We need solutions. And as I say, my biggest concern right now is with the polling figures going down for President Biden. I've seen stuff down in the 38%, 34%, especially with independents like myself. And that really concerns me. I don't want to see the demise of the Democratic Party, because if there is an overwhelming whitewash with the Republicans in November. And once again, they need that party needs to come up with good, solid solutions,
Well,
not just simply a banner saying, let's go Biden kind of a thing,
I don't understand the Republican Party because you speak to the individuals who are supposed to be moderate Republicans, and they say one thing, but yet when it comes to voting, they vote as a block, as very right wing.
Well, so do the Democrats. I have to say that, except in the case of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. However, once again, we need to have solutions. We don't need to have the party banner. We need solutions. We are faced at this point right now with unbelievable inflation that, well, you and I saw it, 40 years ago when we were kidlets. We saw the inflation. I mean, when I was at the time when I left the news business, I decided to go into, of all things, the loan business, the lending business with the home loans. And I was selling mortgages, heavens to Betsy, 18%, 17%. And people were grabbing them at that time.
I bought my first house, I think it was like 16% interest rate.
Yeah. So we've lived through that period of time, and it was a very tough period of time because you had high inflation and yet you had low productivity. That's what stagflation is all about. And there seems to be some warning signs. I'm very much looking into the stock market. I'm in and out of the stock market on a regular basis now, about 50% in and 50% out. But what's happening now is you're seeing that the 10-year T-bond is sitting at below the 2-year bond. And the problem with that is if that goes on for an indefinite period of time, it's now been 4 or 5 days, the indefinite period of time might be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be 3 weeks. That's indicating historically a recession could be in the offing. It may not be tomorrow, but it could certainly be the end of the year. And that's of real concern, especially for people like you and me, and folks that don't make as much cash as we do. We're certainly not rolling in money, but you know what I'm saying.
But I'll tell you, I don't understand certain things in economics where in the last 4 or 5 years, the billionaires or the top 10 people in the world, they more than doubled their their worth. I'm talking about, you hear like these numbers from $100 billion. They're now making $210 billion. And they're talking about the oil companies who are bitching, oh, we got to raise the prices, blah, blah, blah. Yet they are making more profit now than they have in the last 5 years. Why are they making profit if they're not making?
MSNBC may be saying that the oil companies are making profit, but I, as a shareholder, let you know they're not necessarily making that much profit. But I do agree with you in certain areas where the globalization, where the outsourcing to places like China, Vietnam, Thailand, India has cost jobs here in the United States, obviously. And what have we gotten? Well, we've gotten goods, which is fine. But when we had the pandemic in 2020, it really brought to light our overdependence, especially on China, with such things as medicine, the N95 masks that we could no longer get. So what's interesting is that I've been listening to some interviews. J.P. Morgan's Jamie Dimon is talking about the end of globalization, and that's good, but bad. I want a certain end to globalization because once again, we've seen what's happened with Russia invading the Ukraine. Ukraine apparently delivers 40%, maybe even higher, of all of the wheat that goes into Europe.
Wheat and corn.
Yeah, and that's a real problem with Russia at war now, warring with Ukraine. So part of me wants to say, keep everything here in the United States. The other part of me says, well, we want some globalization, but when it comes to the situation that we're seeing now in Ukraine, I think we've got some very, very important lessons to learn here.
Well, the thing is, I agree. I think we should have globalization, but we have to have more cooperation with countries.
Mhm.
Because for me, my viewpoint, the world is getting so small.
Mhm.
It's it's no longer, they say America first. America first for what? I mean, yeah, we're Americans, but there's one world. We had the pandemic. I mean, everybody is suffering. It's not just the United States is suffering. It's not just China is suffering. It's not just Europe is suffering. Everybody is. When you have the climate change, it's not that the United States is suffering. It's everybody suffering. I don't
Mhm.
think we could, now, make, everybody goes into their little shell. We're America, we're China, we're Japan. But I don't know whether the people who rule these countries have that mentality, because a lot of them are into their senior years.
Mhm.
And their mentality was, oh, we're going to control, but you can't control.
Well,
There
it's
is
very,
no way.
but it's very interesting. If we look at the example of Ukraine, Russia and even China figured that Ukraine would be down for the count in probably a couple of days. I even think that President Biden figured that they would be down and out in a couple of days. Once again, you're looking at ordinary people that are now fighting for their lives and fighting for their country and fighting for their freedom. I just, it's an interesting study of the courageousness that takes place when an individual's homeland and their country is attacked. So when you talk about America first, I don't think it's to the exclusion of other nations. This country has been, to a T, the most generous country in the world. And if that wasn't true, then why are so many people wanting to come here to the United States? The opportunity for individuals like you and me. For example, let's take in 2015 when we realized that our handyman business with my new husband, our handyman business of 25 years was not going to survive in 2015. When we decided to make the move from Southern California, from Santa Barbara, all the way across the country, you realize that we're one of the few one of the few countries where we didn't have to ask anybody's permission, government or anybody's permission, to be able to come across the country and move into a home and buy a home that we'd never even seen, into a state that we had never even traveled to. The freedom and the opportunity here in the United States is really truly unparalleled.
Well,
And I just think we need to be able to encourage that. And that means for racial minorities, it means for all Americans. We need to encourage that. And once again, I really would like to see more weapons going directly to Ukraine. I don't understand why President Biden is so reluctant to be able to send the weapons that the Ukrainians need.
I'm not sure what's above board and what's below. As I say, I think we spoke about before.
Yeah, we
There's
did.
probably a lot of things going on that we don't know. And as
Of
I
course.
say, my examples of what happened in Vietnam, the Vietnam War during the those years that or the conflicts in Central America that basically was quarterbacked by the CIA, who did a
Yep.
lot of things that they
Yep.
weren't supposed to do. And I'm sure there are a lot of things that people don't know
Yep.
are happening, that being negotiated with weapons, and part of the thing that Russia is going through. It's like the same thing that we went through with Afghanistan
Hmm.
or Vietnam. They have the heavy weapons if they wanted to do a nuclear war and wipe out the entire country.
Hmm.
But they're limited to the old traditional
Hmm.
weapons. They can bomb, but they can't send the soldiers in. The foot soldiers that they originally have. That's where they meet the resistance of the people. And I think that's almost any country. It's that guerrilla warfare that the Viet Cong had. It's the thing that the Afghans had. It's
Hmm.
basically, we have the soldiers and we had the power, but we didn't have the people that were in that country.
Well, it's the human spirit, and it's funny when they talk about the Great Reset. The Great Reset for whom? For the very wealthy. I agree with you. The wealthy during the pandemic did exceedingly well. And is that fair? Is it unfair? I think it's part of the globalization that took place. that many of these very wealthy individuals got even wealthier and wealthier.
Again,
Um,
I
how
don't
do you,
think
how
we
do you
could,
handle that?
I don't think we could avoid globalization. I think we have to take it and know how to use it.
I agree
Because
with that.
because there are things that we have that other countries need, that other countries
Yep.
need, that we have, as far as natural resources. What we have to be aware of, which I, uh, really was surprised at, like the thing that we had with computer chips. Didn't the
Mhm.
business people know that we were dependent on China for computer chips?
Thank you.
Didn't they say, I'm talking about the not necessarily the government, I'm talking about the ultra rich and didn't they
Yep.
know they should have a factory here doing computer chips, that we were dependent on this, and this was one of the prime needs of manufacturing?
Well, the
I
interesting
don't
thing,
understand why we were caught with our SOS pants down.
I agree. And what's interesting about it is that the super rich need to have normal everyday people that are educated, well educated, to be able to make sure that the manufacturing and the productivity stays where it needs to be.
Hopefully they
So
get
I
paid
agree
for it.
with you. I agree with you with the semiconductors. Now you're seeing a company like Intel, which could be an interesting buy. And once again, I am not a licensed investor, although I do invest. But you might want to take a look at Intel. Intel was completely devastated in the 90s and the 2000s in terms of their semiconductors. They're now coming back and they're now opening up and trying to only centralize here in the United States. Their stock price is sitting at just about $50 a share, and they've got good debt service. They have very little debt. They have good profit margins. So that's one area where bringing it back to America, I do believe, is going to be profitable for investors like you and me, but also is going to be good for our national security. We cannot afford to allow semiconductors to be the whim and the fancy of China or Russia. And I mean, you realize now, and everybody is now talking about it, China is licking its lips to be able to see about going into Taiwan. When my late husband and Tom and I, we did the program with you, Malcolm, we spent extensive periods of time in Hong Kong and in China. And let me say, their regard for Americans is extremely low. And they want our technology, they want our intellect, they want our creativity. What they don't want is us. They don't believe in democracy. They don't believe in entrepreneurship.
But they
They
believe in
believe,
no, they believe in capitalism.
well, their capitalism is controlled strictly by the Communist Party, and they are quite hard task makers, to be sure. Ask the Uyghurs about that.
But I
But
mean, what always surprises me, and I don't know how we can overcome it. If you go like like Iran is our enemies, certain Middle Eastern countries are enemies. But if you ask the people on the street,
mhm.
they like America. They like the U.S. They have friends.
They're not allowed to say that, though.
I know, but it's strange. So I don't know who hates us. It's like one time I remember the old joke when Khrushchev and was having
Yeah.
problems with Kennedy. It wasn't Khrushchev and Kennedy that were angry. It was the interpreters.
Well,
But
you remember when Khrushchev was at the UN. I will never forget it. I was a little kidlet at the time. He
yeah,
takes his shoe off and he's banging it like a gavel.
right.
Uh, the Russians they have quite a history and a reputation of that type of behavior. We're once again being reminded about it in Ukraine. But fortunately, at this point right now, it looks like the Ukrainians have started to fight back. I don't know if there is going to be a win in the Ukraine, but I do know that there's got to be some way to be able to get the weapons that President Zelensky is begging for. And I don't understand what the problem is. I do believe, however, at this point right now, you're seeing a flood of mercenaries going in. British mercenaries, U.S. mercenaries, a lot of free, world mercenaries are going in to be able to help the Ukrainians.
Well, you always had that as I forget what the name of the group was that fought for the U.S. They were mercenaries.
Mhm,
And they
mhm.
weren't American soldiers. But getting back to another subject,
What's that?
which probably has more play now than the war.
What's that?
What do you think of the slap? Let's get
Will
seriousness to
Smith and
silly.
Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Academy Awards. Uh, Arguably the most boring TV that could possibly be. And the only reason that anybody even looked at it was because that Will Smith assaulted Chris Rock.
No, well,
I have a different take on it. I have a different
I
take
look
on
at the
it.
Academy Awards, I look at the Academy Awards because I want to see what outrageous costumes
Oh,
or what the actresses will be and some beautiful women. In fact,
oh yes,
the Williams sisters really look good.
yes,
And
gorgeous.
I didn't know that Venus was so big on top. I always
Yes,
I always thought it was Serena, but
yeah.
they wore it and they were, they couldn't bend over. But the question,
But
okay, let's go back.
let's getting back to this. It's not really a slap, the assault. My problem with it is that once again, it appears as though it's going to be another allowing the Hollywood elite to get away with assault, which a normal individual would have been arrested and would have been facing charges for assault. But even above and beyond that, I was surprised and disappointed in the wife, Jada. And I have to tell you that as soon as that joke came out, as it was a joke, for heaven's sakes, all righty, and however inappropriate it was to make fun of someone's illness, fine. But you know what? She should have had the guts to have stood up herself, grabbed Will, looked at him and said, Will, sit down and shut up. And it would have been taken care of right then and there. She should have never given away her power. And for heaven's sakes, to have this day and age, a man defending a woman's honor, talk about giving away your power.
It's also
Jiminy.
a black man defending a black woman's.
There's no excuse for that type of assault, and especially on a internationally televised program such as the Oscars. There is absolutely no excuse. And as I say, Jada was completely wrong. She had a perfect opportunity. A strong woman like Jada should have had the guts to have grabbed her husband and said, Will, sit down and shut up.
Well, what I don't understand is, for Will to say, well, I'm in the public, public eye, so I can take things, said about me. But so is Jada. Jada's not a shrinking violet. I mean, she's a well-known actress,
right?
And their marriage is well-known, so she
Right.
doesn't have to be protected.
No, she doesn't, and she should have had the guts
Yeah.
to have said
But-
to Will, sit down.
Okay, but now my question is, what should be done? Now, the thing that, I mean, he lost his cool. And he shouldn't have done it. And there should be some sort of repercussions that he did it. But conversely, he is well respected before this. He's well respected in the industry. He does good things. He's never really, lost his, temper or been outrageous, sort of like Kanye West or something like that. He has been probably, an example of someone that the star should be. But now, what should his repercussions be?
Well, let's put it this way. What would happen if you had done or I had done something like that? All right. So the same penalties should be imposed upon an individual who assaults another individual as what happened with Will against Chris Rock. Chris Rock decided not to file charges against the individual, against Will. But for example, on the battery, on spousal abuse, the wife does not have to file charges against the husband who has assaulted her. So bottom line is something needs to be done. And the other issue you have, my dear, is when you have Will Smith's son saying, what did he say? That's the way we do it. That's the way we do it. Wait a minute.
Well, yeah, that's a bad
Does that
example
mean-
for
Does that
you know,
mean, oh yeah,
black families.
that's the way we do it. Let's go ahead and beat the holy hell out of people. I'm sorry. I have no, I will not be watching or will not be watching Will Smith. I will not be watching Jada. I will not be watching any of those individuals.
For that one incident, you think that was as egregious enough for all of
Yeah.
a sudden to ban him?
Yeah, because the problem is this, that it was internationally televised. That was the Academy Awards. That's the Oscars. That is prestigious. That is the pinnacle of the industry. And for that individual to have lost his temper like that, and for Jada, the wife, not to have done anything about it, I mean, it's just, it's
But again, which I go back, you know, that is the one incident in his entire career that he lost, that I'm aware of, that he lost his cool.
Once again.
And
So
he's well respected.
If you would have done that to someone else, what would your penalty be? He should be treated
Probably a
like the rest of
misdemeanor.
us.
I mean, I doubt whether, you know, for me, if I would slap someone, maybe, you know, some, if I was arrested, it would probably be a suspended sentence with, you know, doing some, you know, 6 months of, you know, labor doing fields. I don't think
And we'll need to do that.
I don't think I'd be incarcerated.
No,
But
what
anyway,
you're saying is it needs to be the same across the board. We
Well,
don't have elites. Actually, we do.
but as someone said, we're talking about this, and people are dying in Afghans, in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Ethiopia. You listen to the news.
We can only do what we can control, and we can control this.
If you want to get depressed or what's happened,
I don't want to get depressed.
tune into the BBC,
I know.
because they bring you news throughout the world, and the world is, I won't say what the word I want to say, but anyway, our time is up.
Oh, doggone it. And I wanted to talk about so many things like Biden's decision to go ahead, President Biden's decision to be able to tax unrealized gains. Ah, Jesus. Better hold on to everything you own, bud.
Because all my gains.
I don't mean to laugh, but it's laughable. It's absolutely laughable.
Well, listen, I think the way I listen to, when I listen to Fox News, it's also laughable that they blame Biden for everything, including the 1918 epidemic.
Well, they shouldn't. I watch Fox News, I watch MSNBC, CNN, I watch all of them. And once again, the editorializing needs to stop. I've been a reporter for a long period of time, and you just present the facts and you let people make a decision, and people need to make a decision.
Okay, let's take the show that we have and approach the networks and see if we can get it now, or PBS, and get it on. You have the contacts.
Well, we did have some points of agreement, which is we need to go ahead and pursue the technology to be able to clean up the energy. We also agreed on the fact that Will Smith should be probably prosecuted as an assault, whether it be a misdemeanor or whatever it's going to be. We did agree on that. And we also did agree that the politicians, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, need to get their acts in gear, and they need to provide solutions, not just more problems for us to solve. They need to solve the problems.
That's why they're elected. And but we have our half hour is up. In fact, it's like about 34 minutes.
Got it.
Maybe we'll do an extended show for a week marathon.
Wouldn't that be fun?
And you know something, at the end of the week, we'll probably still have a lot to discuss. I'll see you next week, kid.
All right, sounds great.
Well.
My love,
Bye.
Anna. Bye-bye.